Good afternoon, I'm Vashon Brown with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says he's hoping that the health regulations in place for the business process outsourcing sector BPOs will lead to their enhanced growth in Jamaica. Mr. Holness made the comment as he addressed Parliament last evening.
After May 6, 2020, a business in the business processing outsourcing sector shall be permitted to completely reopen.
The reminder signaling that after a 14-day closure, BPOs can start reopening
only after they are cleared to do so by the Director General of ODPEM after a joint inspection process.
The sector, which is the third largest earner of foreign exchange for the country, was ordered shut on April 23, except for certain critical services after an outbreak of COVID-19 at the Alarica call center in Portmore, St. Catherine. That workplace cluster, with 221 cases, is the single largest contributor to Jamaica's 473 confirmed cases of COVID-19 so far. To prevent any further outbreaks, stringent health regulations have been put in place for BPOs. Mr. Holness says inspections have been done to determine if the BPOs are complying.
I have a report. I haven't fully read the report, so I won't brief Parliament on it. I'll brief Parliament at the next sitting. But by the next sitting, I'm expecting that the BPOs would have substantially met the standards and would be in a position to be cleared to operate.
He said he's met with the players in the BPO industry and they understand that the measures are in place to protect their business and employees and could even lead to their growth and expansion in a post-COVID-19 world.
These measures will make the business more robust and resilient because they won't just last for the next 2 months. These are measures that we will have to have in place to live through the COVID crisis. And depending on how well the BPOs adjust, because there are other areas in the world that are facing the same fallout, having the same crisis, and people who have these kinds of business, they are looking now to determine which country has the best standards, which country is robust enough to keep their industry being able to service these contracts.
Dashan Hendricks, TVJ News.
The new norm, it's a term now used in reference to how businesses and individuals will operate as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. But while the BPO sector adjusts to measures like work from home, they believe Jamaica is way behind if that is to be adopted fully going forward.
For most employees, working from home is a welcomed change, especially with the escalating threat of the coronavirus.
Personally, I feel uncomfortable because sometimes I have to travel in taxi, but working from home now, I am more comfortable working from home.
Employers embrace the idea as well.
Moving forward in the future is actually going to continue to have work at home. We're actually talking about, having like 30 or 40% of our staff work from home as obviously a reward as well because people like working at home.
However, Serena Godfrey, a director at ITEL BPO in Montego Bay, St. James, is worried that Jamaica's infrastructure is not reliable enough to support the BPO sector. She explains that over the past few weeks, ITEL BPO has already been having major issues with not only Jamaica's telecommunications providers, but the electricity supply as well.
We're finding day after day, our employees will have 20 people supporting a critical business, and they basically all go down because they're living in the same area because either internet or power. So the infrastructure of Jamaica just doesn't support work at home in the way that we need it to, somewhere like the US or Canada. So I think that this is something we have to lobby for because I don't think this is going to stop. I think this is the new norm.
Ms. Godfrey believes that this issue should be addressed quickly as, based on the global impact of COVID-19, the BPO and all other sectors will have to switch to this mode of operation sooner than later. However, she warns that at the current rate, Jamaica's future looks bleak.
Over time, it's going to get worse and worse. If you aren't noticing already, the kids are at home, they're using the internet for school, and the bandwidth gets slower and slower and actually degrades our service. And in many cases, we're actually impacting critical businesses like healthcare, where we lose an entire group of people and those customers all drop. And then we can't get back online to support them. So I think there's definitely a need and a pressure that has to be put on the government to help us put these steps in place.
In spite of this, however, she says with dozens of local and overseas entities depending on the sector, as do hundreds of employees locally, they'll continue to make do until changes are made. The employees say they are also committed to the task.
Every individual in Jamaica and worldwide will do things differently after this pandemic. The BPO is no different. We may need to look at our operations and how we do some things, but generally speaking, we will continue to operate and to support the lines of businesses that we do.
Herman Green, TVJ News.
With bar operators losing millions due to a shutdown of the sector, Cabinet is reviewing several proposals to reopen them. To minimize the spread of COVID-19, bars had been ordered closed until May 31. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has, however, empathized with the operators of over 10,000 bars. He said each bar employs about 2 people. Mr. Holness outlined some of the conditions that bars would need to adhere to when they reopen.
The hours would be limited. We would have to consider the gathering rules in a specific way. In other words, if we couldn't keep the 10, we would have to make it. I'm not saying what it's going to be. I mean, I'm just saying that you can expect that it would be less than the gathering.
Mr. Holness adds that physical distancing markers will have to be in place and attendants will wear masks.
We may have to ensure that if there are slot machines or gaming machines, that they are appropriately spaced. We may have to ensure that group games are not allowed.
And we now take a break on the midday news, but we'll be right back. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Continuing the news now. The government is expected to face a hefty bill to implement physical distancing measures in schools come September. Minister with responsibility for education, Carl Samuda, addressed the issue in Parliament on Tuesday.
Right now, the average class is about 25 to one teacher, 25. Average about, give or take. You're not supposed to have, under this present regulation, you're not supposed to have more than 10 to 12 students in that class. Where are you going to put the rest? That is something that's going to exercise our minds wondrously.
Mr. Samuda insists it cannot be business as usual as administrators grapple with the reality of the COVID-19 pandemic.
So we are trying our best to use the facilities that we have, to expand where we can, to upgrade where we can. One of the things we have set as an objective is to eliminate, there's no such thing in any school you'll ever see again where you have 3 children at one table that's designed for 2.
An opposition MP is warning of a possible increase in teenage pregnancy during the period of schools being physically closed. There are concerns about some students who lack guidance as well as the tools to access online classrooms. The issue was raised in Parliament on Tuesday by Noel Arscott, the MP for Clarendon Southwest. Lack of internet access has been a major challenge for students, particularly in deep rural communities. It's why Member of Parliament for East Kingston and Port Royal, Philip Paulwell, is questioning the disuse of the Universal Service Fund to provide broadband internet to all students island-wide. According to Mr. Paulwell, the cost of providing the service could be fitted under the government's e-learning program. But Minister with responsibility for education, Carl Samuda, said the 2 major internet providers are not inclined to distribute service in deep rural areas. 394 people who applied for government's COVID-19 assistance programs were said to be eligible for a payout, even though they did not meet the criteria. That discovery was made by the Auditor General's Department, which reviewed the information systems of the web-based application portal. The audit also found that the system accepted 3,343 applications after the cutoff date. The matter was brought to the attention of eGov Jamaica, who confirmed the findings. Now, the Auditor General recommended an investigation before payouts are made. eGov indicated that additional control measures had been or will be implemented to prevent a recurrence. Vendors who use the Maypen market in Clarendon want the municipal authorities to make immediate improvements to the market. The vendors say they are not comfortable, especially after a fire which gutted a large section of the market. The vendors renewed their calls after a standoff with police officers who removed tarpaulins used to cover several streets in the Maypen market.
We also agreed that no tarpaulins should be tied across any driveway or roadway, for that matter. The tarpaulins have been creating a security problem, as a security risk for the police. And since everybody wants to know why no tarpaulins should be there, I'll tell you, the cameras are working in the town, and the police need to see what is happening and have clear visibility.
The police in at least one parish are having a hard time with some criminal activities due to the high number of persons now wearing masks. All Jamaicans are now mandated to wear masks as part of efforts to limit the spread of COVID-19. This is, however, providing some robbers with the perfect cover to commit their acts.
We're having some challenges as it relates to masked men. Since this COVID pandemic, we have had a few robberies in Chapelton and in the Lionel Town area. And based on what the complainants are saying, all persons wear masked, cap, and the mask just allow just their eyes to be seen, which would render us which will render the investigation very difficult to prove identity.
And here now is a preview of what's coming up in this evening's health report.
In the next edition of the Health Report, we'll look at COVID-19 and obesity.
One of the things which the COVID pandemic has changed our lifestyle so much that a lot of people are at home with limited recreational activity and access to a lot of snacks and a lot more, food supply than we would normally have in the home. So it's not uncommon. A lot of people have documented that their eating habits have changed significantly. They're having a lot more snacks just because they're home and these food choices are there.
That's the Health Report this evening in Primetime News. And now for today's healthy living tip. Eat more fruits, vegetables, nuts and whole grains. Exercise at least 30 minutes a day. And cut down your consumption of fatty and sugary foods.
Time now for sports. Technical Director at Jamaica College, Davian Ferguson, says despite the criticisms during their 2019 campaign, the plan was always to remain at the institution.
Ferguson won the Manning Cup title in his first season at the Old Hope Road-based school, but was often criticised for the way the team played. However, the former St. Jago High coach says the negative perception didn't affect him.
At no point in time I ever thought about giving up. As a matter of fact, I don't think I listened to a lot of the outside noise. A lot of them was basically brought to my attention. So I never really pay attention, and I'm not one to really quit. So that never really crossed my mind at all.
Ferguson, though, admits the performance of the team was not always attractive.
What is important as a coach is that wherever you go with your beliefs, your concepts, your principles, your ideas of the game. And you don't change that. So whoever is employing you, they know exactly what you bring. It is hard over the course of 4 to 5 months to really see the real philosophy of a coach, Davian Ferguson. But I believe that we saw good organization, we saw a very good transition, which are hallmarks of really how we want to play.
Ferguson, who also lost to eventual winners Kingston College in the Champions Cup semi-final, says with more time he expects the team to play his brand of football.
Over the long haul now, I think that's how we have to judge it in terms of have I made an impact in getting the players or getting Jamaica College to play the brand of football that I want? As a coach, a team is always a reflection of you, the coach, not of the spectators, not of anybody else, but as you, the coach.
JC was denied a double after losing to Clarendon College in the final of the Olivia Shield. Bernardo Brown for TVJ Sports.
And that's the Midday News. I'm Vashon Brown. Join us at 7 for Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, have a good afternoon.